Good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. It's the festive season across the country, so a very, very happy Dashera to all our viewers across India. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the program tonight, the RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat has raised alarms over growing regional instability, warning that external forces could exploit these tensions to stir unrest within India. Speaking today, Mr. Bhagwat highlighted how geopolitical shifts and cross-border influences might fuel internal divisions, urging vigilance to safeguard our national unity. Now, his remarks come amidst heightened concerns over border security and the impact of global conflicts on India's social fabric. This instability is underscored by recent regime changes in neighbouring countries. Mass protests, remember, forced Sri Lanka's President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee in 2022 amidst economic collapse in his country. Bangladesh's Sheikh Hasina resigned and escaped to India in August 2024 following deadly student-led uprisings and over job quotas. And just last month, Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli stepped down after youth demonstrations against corruption and a social media ban turned violent. As India navigates this complex landscape, Bhagwat's call for unity resonates strongly. How might the Pahalgam terror attack, as highlighted by Mohan Bhagwat, potentially link to broader neighbourhood volatility? And what about border security enhancements which are required? That's our focus this Dashera evening on Left, Right and Centre. Before we get to our panellists, let's take a look at what Mr. Bhagwat had to say.
अब कभी कभी हो जाता है, प्रशासन जनता के पास नहीं रहता, संवेदनशील नहीं रहता, लोकाभिमुख नहीं रहता, उनकी जनता की अवस्थाओं को ध्यान में रखकर नीतियां नहीं बनती तो असंतोष रहता है। परंतु उस असंतोष को इस प्रकार व्यक्त होना, ये किसी के लाभ की बात नहीं है। प्रजातांत्रिक मार्गों से भी परिवर्तन आता है, ऐसे हिंसक मार्गों से परिवर्तन नहीं आता है। एक उथल पुथल हो जाती है लेकिन स्थिति यथावत रहती है। पूरे दुनिया का अभी तक का इतिहास देख लीजिए, जब से ये उथल पुथल वाली तथाकथित रिवॉल्यूशंस, क्रांतियां आई, किसी क्रांति ने अपने उद्दिष्ट को प्राप्त नहीं किया। इतनी सारी तथाकथित साम्यवादी क्रांतियां हुई, सब साम्यवादी देश आज पूंजीवादी तंत्र पर चल रहे हैं, जिसके खिलाफ क्रांति हुई। ऐसे हिंसक परिवर्तनों से उद्देश्य नहीं प्राप्त होता है, उल्टा इस अराजकता की स्थिति में देश के बाहर की स्वार्थी ताकतों को अपने खेल खेलने का मौका मिलता है। और इसलिए हमारे पड़ोसी देशों में जो उथल पुथल हो रही, ये हमारे ही देश है, वे हमसे दूर नहीं है। कुछ वर्ष पूर्व भारत ही थे, हमारे अपने हैं। उनमें इस प्रकार की अस्थिरता उत्पन्न होना, ये हमारे लिए, हम केवल उनके पड़ोसी है इसलिए नहीं, वो सब हमारे अपने देश है, इसलिए चिंता का विषय है। हितरक्षण से भी ज्यादा ये जो हमारा आत्मीयता का संबंध है, अपनेपन का संबंध है, उसके चलते ये चिंता होती है।
So the RSS chief flagging regional instability, are foreign forces disrupting India, potentially disrupting India? We're joined by Ambassador Pavan Verma, Sudhindra Kulkarni, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, and former Ambassador Veena Sikri. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. Mr. Verma, let me come to you first. There are all sorts of theories. Some are conspiracy theories on why, the uprisings in Bangladesh took place or in Nepal took place. But the fact of the matter is that Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Nepal, they've seen these regime changes. Do you believe that, there are forces which may have triggered the protests, at least in some of the cases?
Good evening, Vishnu. It's a pleasure talking to you. Let me be clear. Where our neighborhood is involved and given the emerging status of India, and the potential adversaries we have, both visible and otherwise, it's quite likely that foreign forces will meddle in troubled waters whenever there is instability in our region. Let us take that for granted, and our intelligence forces, our agencies must be constantly vigilant and aware of the possibility. Now, coming specifically to the examples you mentioned, Nepal and Bangladesh. Bangladesh, certainly I grant that there is the possibility of foreign involvement. Where Nepal is concerned, also the influence of China is strong. But I have a theory on this, and that is that when there is necessarily the kind of instability we saw in Nepal, the state of anarchy even, to constantly make an inference or a conflation of that being in some way inimical to India directly because such forces may replicate themselves here is, I believe, misplaced.
Right.
The two countries have a totally different democratic trajectory. In Nepal, democracy between the earlier pro-royal regime and now the leftist regimes is still fragile. And there have been very significant protests, including because of internal reasons. To compare Nepal with India, where for the last 75 years and more, we have had a very stable democracy, not a perfect democracy, but we've had a democracy with strong institutions. So I don't believe that fear should be invoked automatically or reflexively in order to dub anything which is in the form of a protest in India.
No, I get that.
Or is tantamount to being subversive.
So I completely accept that, and I do believe that this doesn't represent some sort of a threat to us, but it's an uncomfortable environment. It's an uncomfortable subcontinent, which wasn't the case just a couple of years ago, if we include Sri Lanka to it. General Kulkarni, let me come to you next. Your thoughts. All of a sudden, from a very stable and a very prospering relationship with Bangladesh, that is a relationship which appears short. There's been an element of India improving ties with Sri Lanka. There was a great deal of uncertainty earlier on. Nepal is still in the works. We don't know where it might ultimately head. And then, of course, there's Pahalgam, right? And if I was to just infer that, and in fact, Mohan Bhagwat raised this as well, could the attack in Pahalgam also potentially be part of a larger process at destabilizing?
Thank you, Shom, and wishing all to you happy Dashera, happy Gandhi Jayanti, and Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, the slogan that endures Shastriji to all of us. Having said that, Vishnu, in our neighborhood, it's a different setup altogether. In India, it's a real vibrant democracy. You do hear protests. In a democracy, you do hear all kinds of noises. But to take that shape, it's very difficult. First and foremost, for a reason, I see RSS for BJP acts as eyes and ears, one of the largest organizations spread all over the country. So you can feel the pulse. They are in touch with the government. They know exactly what to give. Besides, of course, the organization. So it works like a check and balance. You know what may or may not happen. It suddenly cannot happen in India. It's impossible because of these checks and balances. More than that, if you see what's happened in Nepal, for instance, or possibility of an interference in India from others, it's very difficult, to my knowledge. It's very difficult. Because in Nepal, of course, as what the ambassador just said, definitely you can feel external influences taking place over there. Bangladesh, obviously external influences. Sri Lanka, unable to pay its debt. You had the problem over there. So these kind of things can happen. But all said and done, India is one country where the checks and balances one. Second, India is a democracy, a vibrant, where diversity is almost like celebrated. And he clearly brought out no us and them. If there is no us and them, then everybody is to be taken an on and off. Every now and then we keep insisting on sabka saath, sabka vishwas, not just a slogan, but to insist and ensure that this kind of a thing is there. And if there are no differences within the society, even if there are platforms where you air your views, I think that's fair enough to ensure that such a situation doesn't arise in
but
India.
let me just take this to Sudhinder Kulkarni. I think the larger point that Mohan Bhagwat was also raising was about instability in the entire region. Whether or not it impacts us, I would suggest from a foreign policy standpoint, it does. We've had a troubled relationship with Maldives, which we've now fixed. We were very wary about what might happen in Sri Lanka. That seems to have righted itself. Bangladesh is a mess. Myanmar at one level is a mess. Bhutan faces a lot of problems from China. They are, of course, very close to us still. Pakistan is a huge mess. And Nepal is going through a great deal of uncertainty. We are surrounded by countries who are either not our friends or are facing internal problems. Is that not the larger message of Mohan Bhagwat? That be wary, be concerned about what's happening around you?
Let me begin by wishing you and all your readers, viewers, happy Dashera. But today is also Gandhi Jayanti. We should pledge to build India on the ideals that he stood for and he sacrificed his life for. Truth, non-violence, communal harmony, and peace in the world. So having said this by way of preface, let me come to your question. We should, before blaming foreign forces, one cannot rule out the hand of foreign forces, but before we do that, we should look at the internal factors that caused unrest and instability in some of our neighboring countries. Wherever there is misrule, wherever the government does not respond to people's needs and aspirations and concerns, when there is injustice that is not listened to, there's bound to be disappointment. And disappointment leads to discontent, to anger, protest, and even that is not responded to, it leads to unrest, which is what has happened. So therefore, be it Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, there are some internal factors that led to unrest. Is that going to affect India? I don't think so, because as other panelists have said, our democracy is very strong. Our social structure is very strong, but that does not mean that we should be complacent. If our institutions are compromised, if our democracy is hollowed out, then there are going to be problems even in India. Okay. Now, coming to Dr. Mohan Bhagwat's speech, there is something very important he said, referring to Bangladesh and some of our neighboring countries. He said that they are also part of our family. A very profound statement. So let us treat our neighbors as our family. South Asia is one civilizational family. So we should care for our families, family members. And if there is problem, we should go out to see how these problems can be sorted out, including in Pakistan. Of course, there are forces of extremism and terrorism, but the entire Pakistan is not defined by extremism and terrorism. And therefore, as the largest country of this civilizational family, it is our duty to think for the whole family and support them, bring them to the right path, while of course at the same time at home, we should take care that democracy is strengthened and not weakened.
Okay. Ambassador Sikri, none of you are really biting on the question which I was asking, other than slightly Ambassador Verma. Is there a larger force which is doing this? Because at some stage, we really need to understand why, in quick succession, all of these countries, particularly Nepal, Bangladesh, have really gone through this turmoil. In the case of Nepal, it happened within days. It's surprising. They may have had huge differences, problems within their government, but the manner in which there was complete anarchy and a government being thrown away in 48 odd hours, right? It's unbelievable. So therefore, how has this been triggered? How has this happened?
Well, I think, Vishnu, first of all, happy Dashera to you and all your viewers. I think the issues that Mohan Bhagwat ji has raised in his speech are very significant and very important. You are absolutely right. There is a remarkably similar playbook that has operated in Sri Lanka in 2022, in Bangladesh in 2024, and in Nepal this year. And this playbook is concentrated on Gen Z. In fact, even when this year, when President Trump was abolishing USAID, he actually tweeted at one point, you know, USAID is spending so much money on trainings. What are these trainings? So this is exactly what has come out even in Bangladesh and similarly in Nepal and Sri Lanka, that Gen Z is being trained to act as triggers for civil unrest. And the moment is decided depending on the local situation. We saw, in fact, in the local issue can be corruption. It was, of course, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he and his family and 300 family members, all there. They were there. And then, but the forces of democracy in Sri Lanka were strong. So they went back to parliament and they used parliament, got an interim prime minister, an interim president, and then they've had elections and they've gone back to their electoral processes, which is very strong. In Bangladesh, there was a very weak democracy. The institutions of democracy had been considerably weakened. The army did not play its role. And in that, same operation using quota reforms, which actually was a non-issue, which had already been settled 5 years before by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina itself, but then revived through a court case and so on. And Sheikh Hasina had gone to the Supreme Court saying that the quota had to be abolished. And in fact, it was abolished on 21st of July, before almost 2 weeks before Sheikh Hasina had to leave the country. But then the resort to violence. And here I would say that, where within days, similarly in Nepal, you've got Hami Nepal, which had done the trainings, and within less than 24 hours, huge buildings are put on fire. 15-story high Hilton building, the Singh Darbar, the Parliament building, absolutely chosen and prepared for. You cannot put a building on fire in a matter of hours. It takes days. You need material. You need to know how to do it. It's all been planned. But again, in Nepal, I think a first situation was avoided because the army chief came in and said, I am not going to allow this unrest. I'm going to take firm action. And everybody melted away and they've got a very good Chief Justice.
So I take your point, Ambassador Sikri, that, it does seem to have been pre-planned. Ambassador Verma, last comments to you. We've got about 2 minutes left. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, because I have to catch a flight. No, Vishnu, I'm afraid, with a lot of respect, I don't fully agree with Ambassador Sikri. You see, you cannot find alibis for consistent misrule within your country. In Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina had become relentlessly authoritarian, and I'm sorry, even our foreign policy did not counsel her otherwise or build relations sufficiently realistic with the opposition. In Nepal, the complete political instability, misrule, economic decline, unemployment, jobs, corruption, these had created an environment where one trigger could set an entire situation aflame. I'm not ruling out the possibility of anti-social elements getting involved, of loot and arson, even possibly of some foreign forces. But let's not make these things an alibi for consistent misrule. This is my point, and that applies, by the way, even though the situations are entirely different, to India as well.
All right.
So I'll take leave with your permission.
No, we are done over here, and I'd like to thank all of you very much for taking your time out on Dashera and spending some time. It's an important day, and I think Sudhinderji's message,
and Gandhi Jayanti,
his message on Gandhi Jayanti is so important. Let's ultimately hope for peace in our country. It's been a very trying year. We leave it over there.